tell me a little bit about yourself, who you are, and what you're building.
Hi, my name is Alphonse Carnicero. Thank you first for inviting us to be in this interview. And I am the co-founder of Able Human Motion, which is a startup from Barcelona, where we develop robotic exoskeletons for people with impairments.
What's your background? How'd you get started in building this? I see that you have a background in coaching basketball and engineering, both biomedical and mechanical. And like, were those the biggest influences in how you got started in this, or what made you start building Able?
You're right. That was my passion when I was young. Basketball, I used to play when I was young, and then I also started coaching. And during my studies, I was a big fan of technology, and I always tried to like somehow relate my studies to the technology. So I did some research on how to improve the basketball shot based on physics and several models. But after that, when I was studying industrial engineering, I was studying the bachelor's. At the end of the bachelor's, my father had a stroke, and that changed completely his life because he was barely able to walk, to write, to speak. He had many difficulties, and then also changed the life of my family, no, because it's a huge change. It happens very quickly, and it also made me think about in which field I wanted to work, in which area I wanted to apply my technological background. And this is when I started like super passionate and I started falling in love with the biomedical engineering field. I did my master's in that area, and then I started specializing in the neurorehabilitation field. I did the master thesis in collaboration with the Hospital Institute Goodman. It's a hospital here in Spain. And from that, you can imagine like how after that, no, I decided to create the company Able Human Motion to be able to create technology that can improve the quality of life of people with disabilities.
That's an awesome story. So kind of to help people learn a little bit more about like the background in building this technology and why it's important, right, for people that are paralyzed. Could you explain a little bit more about like the leading causes of paralysis and what leads someone to becoming ultimately paralyzed?
Yeah, there are many causes of paralysis in the world. There is 1 billion people that is affected somehow by paralysis, either complete or incomplete. And the most common causes are two, which will affect 1 in 6 people in the world. So it's like something that, in fact, the number of neurological impairment is growing in the last year. So this is something that we all should be like aware of that, no, because it's something that is growing the problem. And then the second biggest affectation is spinal cord injury. Spinal cord injury is the most common cause is when you have a traffic accident, and then the spine is broke, no, and this causes that you lose completely your mobility below the level of the injury. So this is the spinal cord injury is the condition that we are targeting with our first product. It's a robotic exoskeleton to restore the mobility of those joints that are affected by the injury. And there are many types of spinal cord injury. So you can have there are two things that affect the kind of motor impairment that you have. One is the level of the injury. So if it's a higher level, then you lose mobility like in a higher degree. And then there is it's if it's whether complete or incomplete. When it's complete, it's that all the section of the spine has been broken, and then there is no connection between the brain and the actual muscles. So for those patients, there is not the possibility to rehabilitate. No? But even if there is not this possibility to rehabilitate, being able to stand and to walk brings many health benefits, because sitting in a chair has many health related problems, like you can have cardiovascular diseases, you can have pressure sores, you can have chronic pain, you can have many related issues to being seated in a wheelchair and to actually to not moving, no. So for them, it's also useful as a way to stand and to walk some of the time. And then for the other patient, for those that are incomplete, then the exoskeleton is part of a rehabilitation program, is part of their therapy, and it's a device that helps them to get better faster. And how we do this, there is the principle of motor learning. No? So if you start rehabilitating and for example, using an exoskeleton, the earliest possible, then the more chances that you have to get better. And then another principle that applies is that you have to do many repetitions, a lot of intensity of this therapy. And this also increases the chances of rehabilitating. So for those patients, for those incomplete, our exoskeleton is also a tool for them.
Okay. And so to kind of better understand it a little bit, how does the exoskeleton communicate with their body in order for them to actually, make steps and move?
Yes, it's through sensors that are incorporated on the exoskeleton. Are inertial sensors that detect acceleration, detect velocities. But this is what the exoskeleton does. But basically, what it does is it's a smart device that detects when you want to do something. So, for instance, if you want to make a step, the sensors of the device are constantly acquiring data. So they know exactly based on the movements that you provide from the upper trunk that you can actually move when you want to make the step. And when they detect this, then the exoskeleton provides the movement, the force to make this step.
How long did it take you to get to this point where you have the physical products and you're testing them on people now?
It has been 3 years of many work of many people. We have so many talented engineers with different backgrounds. Like we have electronic engineers, we have mechanics, we have also programmer, like software engineer. And this is the result. Like in these 3 years, we have built 8 different versions of the prototype that have been continuously tested in patients to learn and develop a new version that is better than the previous one. And this is how we finally achieved the current, like the final exoskeleton design that has been tested in more than 120 patients. And that now we can say that it works successfully in those 120. That previously it was not the case. There were some populations that were working, others not. But now all the patients that came are able to work successfully with the device.
Wow, that's awesome. Big kudos on that. So looking at some of like your marketing and the things you have written on your website, right? It says that your exoskeleton from Able is 2 times lighter and 3 times more accessible than current solutions. So what does that mean?
Yes, those were two of our main aspects that we consider during the entire design process of the exoskeleton. And why was that? No, because we envision this exoskeleton technology as something that can help these people not only in the hospital but also in their daily lives when they go back to home, when they walk in the community. No, not only in that hospital. It's true that this first product that we have built, it's thought for the hospital. It's a hospital, it's a clinical use device as part of this rehabilitation, but then with the vision of becoming also a home care device. This is something that we are currently developing and that we aim to release in 2025, the home care device. But why we made the focus? No, for example, in lightness, that one for us was very important because as light the device can be, then it can be easier to use, to operate, to maneuver around, and also to transfer from one place to another, or and to store. No? So this was something that we detected as a current issue of current devices that weighed more than 30 kilos. So we devoted many efforts to that. And the other two things where we put many efforts, the independence, the autonomy of the patient. No, we want the patient to be able to use the device by himself. So what we have done is, it's true that for regulatory purposes you need a therapist next to you for safety purposes, just in case something happens. But with our device, the patient can completely operate the device autonomously. So, for example, they can decide when to stand, they can stand up from a chair, they can walk autonomously, and the therapist is only there for supervision. This is also very important for this community and home care goal that we are targeting. And finally, the third one is the price. The price is very sensible, especially for home care use and for wide adoption. So we made several innovations to be able to reduce this price, the cost of the device.
Wow, that's awesome. What were you able, like in thinking about how you made it lighter, what were you able to shave off and or use alternatives for that really impacted the weight of it?
There were, first thing, it's we simplified the device. So those things that were not needed, we just skipped them. So the first thing we did is ask clinicians and patients, okay, do you really need that? I mean, this is completely necessary. If not, we will reduce the cost and we will reduce the weight. But then we also detected that a bottleneck for this was the actuator. The actuator is the part that substitutes the muscle, that makes the force, the movement. And that part was one of the most expensive in an exoskeleton cost. No? So we built our own actuators and we have also patented them. So now we are using our own actuator technology.
You guys also have a cloud-based mobile app that provides personalized data-driven therapy. So how is that cloud app paired with the exoskeleton, and what kind of data are patients receiving, and what kind of results have you seen, like the impacts of being able to have this data impacted their recovery, whether it's increased the time or anything else?
Yes, data is super powerful nowadays. So from the very beginning, we decided to not only have a very advanced hardware, but also a software. No? So we developed the exoskeleton is coupled to a mobile phone that is attached to the back of the exoskeleton. So from the smartphone, you can change any parameter of the exoskeleton while the person is walking. So for example, if you want to make bigger steps, then you can change it and interact with the patient so they can provide feedback on whether this is better or not. You can also, for example, reduce the amount of assistance that the device provides, and this is helpful for patients with partial impairment, with an incomplete injury, because then you can ask the patient to make the most, so you can, with the time, reduce the amount of the force that the robot is providing. No, so while they get better, you reduce the amount of force. And this is also a very important tool as part of the rehabilitation. And then this software is also very useful to provide feedback both for the patient and for the therapist. This feedback can be metrics on performance, for example, whether you are having a symmetric pattern with the right and the left leg. You can have this in real time in this mobile app while you are working with the exoskeleton. And finally, it can also provide metrics and you can track the progress that each patient is making. No? So as you very well said, you can see, for example, the number of steps that this patient has done in the last month. This is a tool that also we see that in the future can be very useful for private centers and also for healthcare insurances, as is this data is the proof that this patient has got better with time. So we believe in the power of data. So far, we have these 120 patients, and it's quite few. But in the future, we think that this could be a very important part of our business. And it will be a tool that will help us to put the exoskeleton in more centers and to achieve reimbursement. Because all this data then is uploaded to a cloud server, so you can access it from any part of the world. And then also what helps is that in this smartphone, you can create a patient profile for every patient. So next time Taylor Marks come to use the exoskeleton, you will just upload your profile and then start working the same way that you worked last time. No? And this is very useful because then take the most, like if you have 1 hour for the rehabilitation, you take the most of this hour. No, you don't lose time setting things.
Yeah, and so I know that your home care device, right, isn't out yet, but would they be able to they'd be able to pull up that data that they used while they are at rehab at a facility, and then kind of it would transfer while they were at home. So their rehab would basically could happen at home or in the facility?
Yes, and the idea then, I mean, this is not ready yet, but the idea then is to connect the patient remotely to the therapist and to the doctor. So they can, for example, recommend exercises for the patient while they are using the exoskeleton just from the hospital, like from home. No? And they can monitor how each patient is progressing without having the patient having to go to the hospital. No?
Yeah.
So this remote care is something that we hope that will happen also.
What's the process of somebody starting to use one of the exoskeletons? Like, do they have to be at a certain point in their recovery? Can be anyone, or what does that look like?
No, normally it's since the subacute phase, like like at least like a week after they got the injury, if it's comes for example for a spinal cord injury, and then they have had the surgery. But like as early as possible, since so normally when they start the rehabilitation program, they can start using the exoskeleton, because the exoskeleton, both the hardware and the software, adapt to the needs of each patient. So, for example, if you have a patient like very, very acute that just had the injury and that does not have still proprioception, does not has a lot of motor capabilities, you can ask the exoskeleton to do 100% of the system and to provide additional support, for example, in the upper trunk, so they do not fall. No? And as they progress, you can adapt both the hardware and the software. For example, if it's an incomplete patient and progresses with the time, skeleton can do very little or just assist in one of the legs or in one of the joints. So the software smartly adapts to the progress and to the needs of each patient.
And this is just available through hospitals? Is it just in the EU? Is it globally, or what does it look like?
Yeah, in fact, right now it's not available, but it will soon. We are currently under the CE mark certification process in Europe, so we hope that the device will be ready in the European market starting in June next year. So in June 2023, I hope that the device can be marketed to hospitals and to rehabilitation centers and clinics in Europe. And then, as I said, in 2025, we aim to release a second generation for home care. In terms of geographies, our plan is to start in Europe, focusing in Germany, Switzerland, Austria, and then also Spain, and then expand to other European geographies. And in 2025, we hope also to expand to the US.
All right, some big things coming in the next few years. That's awesome. Very exciting stuff. Kind of the last question or two here is, what does the intermediate and long-term future of is there anything you want to build that you haven't talked about right now that you could talk about, like things like for the future that you think would be really interesting in solving problems that are tangentially related to what you're doing right now?
Yes. First of all, in terms of finance, next year with the CE mark, we aim to raise a Series A of 4 million. So if you know anyone that may be interested in the company, just let me know. And then in terms of product development, yes, our first release is this one in June 2023 for hospital use and spinal cord injury. But then we are planning also new releases for other conditions, for example, for multiple sclerosis, for stroke. So we are developing new features for these new conditions. So we hope to amplify the market.
The last question is, what's been the best part so far in this 3-year journey of building Able and actually getting to see it being used and providing value to people who need it?
The best thing is to see the baby growing. So when I started this, nobody knew what was Able. Like we were three of us, and seeing the people growing, like now that we are 16 people in the team, seeing many people caring about Able, seeing a partnership with more than 30 hospitals that believe in the technology and that are like pushing to have it on the market as soon as possible. Those things were super important. And then the reactions of the patient that try the device, and there you see the real value. For example, we had one patient that came with her daughter, and her daughter never saw his dad standing. So when he saw him, like, he started to cry because like he was surprised of how big he was. Like, because you don't realize until then, no? So like this one, you see huge stories and you meet wonderful people, and this has been the best part.